to us today, blockchain law and blockchain governance. So ladies, join me to welcome Mr. Nathan Vandy. He's going to speak about himself shortly before he takes us on the session today. I hope you have your pens and your papers all ready to take down lessons and a lot of information today. It will interest you to know that Nathan Vandy is one of our pioneer speakers on this platform. He's always been supporting this platform, and each of the editions, he's always here to take amazing ladies like this on the topic. He's been taking previously on data protection and data privacy, but this time he's taking us on blockchain, law, and governance. So I'll leave it to him to explain better about himself, but we're so glad, Nathan. I do not take you for granted. I really appreciate all the sacrifice that you have to get through, or you have to make to be able to avail yourself. Ladies, Nathan is not from Nigeria. Most times our timing is not working out for him, and he's always making out time. I recall the last edition for last year. It was the night time where he was, and he still needed to create the time and make that sacrifice to be available to take us on data protection and privacy. And this time he's here too. This is Mr. Nathan from UK. So I hand over the floor to you. Thank you so much, Nathan. I do appreciate your time here and all the insightful sessions you've been giving us in time past. And I trust that today is going to be greater. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and I've seen inside the chat. Thank you so much for the welcoming comments as well, everyone. As we've heard, my name is Nathan Vandy. A little background about me before we go into the presentation that I've got set up. So I completed my UK law degree in 2016, and this is when Brexit happened in the UK. Some of you might know about Brexit. And after Brexit happened, one of the most popular Google searches was, what is the EU? So I was shocked at how a country could leave a political group, the EU, without understanding what they were. So I went to do my master's in EU law in the Netherlands, and that's when I also moved into understanding EU data protection and blockchain technology. And from then on, I started working as a lawyer in the blockchain and crypto space. And recently, I've taken on two roles. One, I'm head of a DAO. We'll learn about this in one of our sessions one day. And also, I am doing a PhD at Paris University on blockchain law and governance. Now, blockchain law and governance is quite a large topic. It's quite extensive, so I won't go over everything in detail, but I'll be able to give a very broad overview. And then if you have specific questions in any of the areas, feel free to put your hands up, let me know, and I'll deep dive a little bit more. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. All right, can everyone see?
Yes. Yes,
Amazing.
see the slide.
Okay. So one of the big areas about blockchain law governance is jurisdiction. And you've got a very big issue between local legal issues and global issues, especially with how the technology works. Once something is on a blockchain, it can be accessed from any country in the whole world. So it's international by nature. But then often you'll have people who are utilizing it who are in different jurisdictions. So for example, I don't know if anyone here has cryptocurrencies or interact with a blockchain, but the same blockchain that you're using in Nigeria is the same one that I'm using in Germany or the UK. And therefore, each of us have to understand our local jurisdictions and the laws that apply to our local jurisdictions as well. So this is a very, very big factor when considering blockchain, something that you have to take into context. The other thing is that it's often 2 steps behind the technology. The law takes a lot longer to catch up to where the technology is. So there's many times where you're working as a lawyer in the area and you have to be aware that the laws might not match. And so a lot of the work that I actually end up doing is working with regulators to understand how they look at the technology, how they look at the applications of the technology, and see where we can bridge that gap. There's a wide range of issues to consider, which often do conflict. We'll go through a few more of those issues a bit later on. However, there's a global move towards more standardization of laws and regulations, with things seen as the Financial Action Task Force, who are looking to harmonize financial surveillance laws in crypto. But there's still very many unanswered questions on things like DAOs, which are blockchain-based organizations, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and the metaverse at large. So one big impact when you're looking at blockchain law and governance is the user community. So when you have an audience or you have a community for your organization, followers maybe, you want to protect the users from bad actors inside and outside of the company. Especially with a lot of blockchain projects, they might have tokens and people might try to scam people for the tokens, to try and steal them away from people, utilizing social engineering to do so, or phishing. And one thing that entrepreneurs should know, and lawyers as well, when they are supporting entrepreneurs who are in the space, is that they should always draft really strong documents, legal documents, to protect their users. So this can come in the form of community conduct policies, which outline all of the laws that the community needs to follow, anti-harassment or trolling policies, where you can even include criminal legislation regarding anti-harassment and trolling, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. Also influencer policy as well. So there's a lot of influencers in the space too that are beginning to, there are a lot of influencers in the space too, which are beginning to promote different projects. And you should make sure that these influencers don't negatively impact your community either. A strong way of protecting your user community also is by using disclaimers. So you can often find these at the bottom of most websites in the blockchain space, which outline that the information that they're providing is not financial advice. Another very big area is intellectual property law. And intellectual property law looks at how intangible assets, such as copyrights, patents, and trademarks can be protected. And the IP strategy in any blockchain organization is primarily centered around the business goal and also the corporate structure. So the business goal could be to, for example, create a new blockchain layer one blockchain, and they might want to see if they can patent that. At the end of the day, majority of blockchains are public, permissionless, and open source. Open source meaning that anyone can see the code, anyone can copy it. Well, there are some permissioned and private blockchains as well, which some people might want to put some sort of patent on. Also, when it comes to copyrights as well, so Deborah, I don't know how we're going to do this. Do we answer questions during the process as well? Can we answer questions during the process?
Okay, I was hoping you could take your slides. When you're done with that, then we can attend to Q&A, if you're okay with that. But if you want questions posed along the way, we can actually tell them to start sending that in, right?
Yeah, that works. I think we have enough time to go through the presentation and also answer questions, especially if they are questions relating to the individual slides, so that we don't have to go back at the end to the individual slides.
Very well, very well. All right, ladies, kindly send in your questions, any questions you have concerning this topic, as he's taking the various slides from the previous ones he has taken now. If you have any questions, send it in. If you have any question bordering on the blockchain law, on the governance, what is not clear to you, you can just send it to the Q&A section, and then Nathan will attend to it along the way as he's taking the session, so we don't have to go back to the previous slides that have been attended to. All right, so we'll be expecting your questions so it can be attended to along the way. Thank you. All
Amazing.
right. Yeah.
And I think there were already 2 questions, Deborah, that I saw pop up, or 2 participants raised their hands. Yeah, instead of raising your hands, could you please put the question in the Q&A, so that it will be easier for us to discuss it.
Yes, for the other person, she's raising her hand to be made co-host. She's part of the team. And then I think this other person is just under a misconception and just raising hands, since I'll just lower it. All right, so if you have questions, kindly send it to the Q&A section. Thank you, ladies.
Awesome. So someone asked, what is blockchain? And I thought that all the people from the last workshop were in this one as well. And in the last workshop, I explained what blockchain is to the whole cohort. But I'll go through it very, very quickly. Blockchain is a technology that allows you to verify transactions in a borderless, censorship-resistant, and transparent way. And by verifying transactions where everyone can see what has happened and who has sent what transaction to the other, it allows people to reduce fraud, and it allows an auditing process. And once a transaction has been saved to the blockchain, acts like a database. Once it's been saved to this secure database, it can only be changed if majority of the people agree to change it. And this means that as long as majority of the participants in the blockchain are honest and good, then you can always trust the blockchain. The concept developed from Bitcoin. I don't know if you guys know Bitcoin, but Bitcoin was the first financial application of blockchain technology, where people were able to send one digital token, Bitcoin, from one person to another. And it was done as a peer-to-peer payment system, because now anyone could send money from one side of the world to the other without using the bank, just use this internet database, this internet technology. And it completely changed the way that we were able to transfer value and verify value online, because instead of trusting centralized entities, we trusted this decentralized technology that anyone can download on the internet, anyone can see this database database. Anyone can see all the transactions that are happening. And so it was a big game changer. I'm sorry, I don't have too much time to dive into blockchain so much because we do have to save time for the legal applications, but I hope that gave you at least a high level understanding of how blockchain works and why it's such a ground-changing technology. Can pop-ups be addressed as a disclaimer? Yes, pop-up ads, I wouldn't say pop-up ads, but pop-up notifications can be used as disclaimers, because advertisements are advertising a product or service, where on a website you would need to notify your user through a pop-up that maybe the information that they're looking at is being advertised, or the information that they're looking at is not financial advice. Are there rules in Nigeria that govern blockchain activities? Yes, there are. It depends which blockchain activity that you're talking about, but financial applications, there are a lot of laws in Nigeria already, especially when it comes to crypto exchanges. We're going to go through a few of laws regarding crypto exchanges later on. We'll touch on it, but then we'll discuss some of the laws that would apply to Nigeria, perhaps. And then apart from finances, are there any other blockchain functions? Yes, there are. We have identity. You can exchange data to other people online as well through a blockchain. You can use blockchain for organizing communities. So through blockchain, you can also have all of your internet money on this blockchain, and all of the individuals around the world can have a vote on how this internet money is used. There's a lot of different applications for blockchain. It might have made sense for me to do a whole presentation on blockchain, because I do think it's quite an interesting topic before this, but maybe that's something that we can think of doing another time. Deborah. Okay. So as I said, I do apologize. I thought that there was more people that were in the previous call, so that we wouldn't have to go too deep into blockchain. But as I said, for the next workshop, maybe we can focus a little bit more on the technology itself, so that you guys can have a deeper understanding of how it works and how it applies. So you'll have a better understanding of how it applies to the law. All right. So, as I said, I do see that there will be a few misunderstandings perhaps about the technology and therefore how it applies to the law. But I will try to explain things as clearly as I can. So what is necessary to consider when setting up a DAO? A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. That's the acronym. And it's an organization around the world, which is an internet native community. So I'm sure all of you are, for example, on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, where you connect with your family over the internet. You might even connect with people that you've never seen before, but you're part of a community. You have a shared goal. You might follow an artist, for example. You might be part of a Facebook group of Burna Boy, and you all follow Burna Boy, and you're just an internet community of people that like his music. What DAOs do and what blockchain technology does is it takes this to the next level, where you're not just following an artist, or you're not just part of a community, but you can own assets, you can own digital assets that are connected to the blockchain, so that are connected to this decentralized database as a community. And as I was explaining beforehand, with Bitcoin, where anyone in the world can download the database, see the transactions, see who's trading with who, you can do the same with DAOs, where you can have a token and anyone can become part of the community. Anyone can see the token price, see who's trading on the token, and these tokens can also have additional properties such as governance rights, similar to how shares worked in companies. So if you understand how companies work, where people can purchase shares or stocks in the company, and then they have governance rights, you can do the exact same thing with DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Instead of these being paper shares, these are digital tokens or digital shares, where everyone who owns this token can decide on how the money in the internet community is used. So I hope that's a decent enough understanding of how blockchain technology takes internet communities and turns them into DAOs. And there's two big things that you need to be aware of when it comes to the legal issues when setting up, let's call it a blockchain company or a DAO. And one is the issuance of the DAO's token. So when you're issuing the token, when you're issuing these shares, you might want to think about it like that. It's an analogy. It's not exactly right, but it's quite close to that. You need to understand the legal risks and compliance during that process. And you also need to understand the legal and governance implications when managing the DAO's operation, because it's just like a company, right? I'm sure a lot of us work remotely. We connect with different people across the world. DAOs work the same because it's an internet community, it's internet native. Anyone could join the organization and purchase the token online and become part of that community. So you need to know how to deal with those legal compliance risks when dealing with an internet native international organization. So these are some of the issues that you need to care about when you're issuing the token. One is how the token is classified, which is jurisdiction specific. I don't know if you guys have started studying financial law yet, but in financial law or financial regulation, different assets are classified differently depending on their characteristics and their nature and how they are used. And every jurisdiction has their own way of classifying these financial assets. So an asset can be a security, an asset can be a utility, an asset can be a payment. And I mainly work in Europe. And so I used the framework that Europeans use for DAO tokens or crypto assets. These blockchain-based tokens, you might look at it like that. And the main ones are security tokens, cryptocurrencies, utility tokens, payment tokens, and hybrid tokens. And someone raise their hands, please just put the question inside the chat instead. That'll be easier. And so security tokens have very high compliance, and security tokens are tokens which refer to another asset. For example, a security token could be a blockchain-based token, but it actually represents the value of shares in Tesla, but it's just a tokenized version. And these security tokens have very high levels of compliance. Then you've got your standard cryptocurrency tokens, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum. And then you've got utility tokens, which can be used to access services and products on a platform, they have a utility, and that utility is usually access. So you can imagine it like a key, or you can imagine it as a please do put your, if you've got a question, put it in the Q&A rather than raising hands.
Yes, I think Nathan, there's Esther that raised her hand. Can you take a question? I've enabled her to speak.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Hello, Esther. Did you have a question?
Hey, I was using my hand now. They're asking me to ask the question.
Okay, let's go on. I'm not sure she has question. So probably she raised her hand by error. Okay.
Okay, no worries then. So yeah, you've got utility tokens, which give utility to a platform. You've got payment tokens, which are used to pay for services on a platform. And then you have hybrid tokens, which are a combination of all of these. And so as a lawyer, when you're working with a blockchain organization, you have to understand whether they have a token and how to classify the token so that you can understand how the law relates to it. Because, for example, even in Europe, member states have their own definition of when a crypto asset will be defined as a security. And a security has the highest level of compliance. You have to submit many forms in order to actually have your security token being live. Otherwise, you can get some serious fines from the regulators if you have a security token, but you haven't licensed it, you haven't got the regulatory approval for it. One of the main ways that founders do this is that if they're working in the blockchain space and they need legal advice, they go to a lawyer to give them a legal opinion on the classification of their token so that they can get a license. Some jurisdictions, it's easier to get a license than others, especially if you want to do something like an initial coin offering, which is that issuance when you, I hope people know what issuance is. Issuance is when you give the tokens to the public, you issue tokens to the public. For some jurisdictions, it's easy to get a license to sell these tokens, to sell these blockchain-based or crypto tokens. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you get the license in one country, you'll get it in the other. And this is when blockchain can become very difficult because it's borderless, right? Once you've released or issued this token, you've released it to the whole of the internet. So anyone on the world can access this token. So in some countries, that token might not be considered a security, but in others, it is a security. This creates a lot of difficulty for founders and lawyers in the space to give legal clarity when they are creating blockchain-based businesses. There's not a lot of case law on how to deal with this, but right now there's a big case with the SEC. The SEC is the Securities Exchange Commissioner. They're a US-based financial regulator. And they have a big case with a company called Ripple, or XRP, whether it's considered a security or not. All right, I think we've got some questions. So we've got two questions here. Sir, I didn't get the meaning of DAO. Could you please reiterate? So when you think about a DAO, just think of it as a company, an internet native company. So all of the assets, the treasury of that company is in tokens, it's in cryptocurrency. They might even have the business operations solely on the internet as well. For a lot of these organizations, they might be an exchange. So they might be buying and selling tokens, but in a decentralized way. So it's all done online. And DAOs ask these internet companies, when they start, they usually issue a token. So they give out a token, and anyone can purchase these tokens on different exchanges, or such as Binance or OKX, like different exchanges they can purchase these. And when you have these tokens, it gives you certain governing rights over the DAO, over the internet blockchain-based organization. That's the most simplest way that I can explain it without doing a whole presentation on it. It's a blockchain-based or internet-based organization that uses decentralized technology for its governance and its operations. But next time we'll do a bit of a deeper dive. I just wanted to do a high level this time because we've got quite a lot of different legal topics to touch on, but we'll dive deeper into individual topics next time. Can this token be turned into cash? As in physical cash? Yes, you have to use an exchange, and then you can convert your token into Naira, you can convert your tokens into dollars. Yeah, it can be turned into cash. All right. So when looking at the financial regulatory side of things, as I said, different jurisdictions have different ways that they classify these tokens. They classify these cryptocurrencies, which is internet money secured through the blockchain. And in the US, they have one of the highest levels of securities laws. There's something called Howey test. And if a transaction meets the following prongs, then it's an investment contract and needs to be registered with the SEC. So this is, for example, an investment of money in a common enterprise. Might be also the expectation of profit to be derived from others' efforts as well. If it's a combination of all of these things, then it's considered security and they need to have a license to actually issue the token. So you always, as a lawyer, need to understand, okay, does my client, does the person that I'm working for, do they want to have their business also in the US directly? Because if they want to have a direct presence in the US, then they need to be able to understand whether their token is a security or not. So let's go to the management of DAOs, these internet native communities. It's a bit of a new topic, DAOs. They've only existed for the past, let's say, 5 years or so. And but they're massive. These internet organizations, they have billions in their treasury, and they work over the internet where anyone can become part of a DAO as well. So later on, when I'm sharing the slides with Deborah, I'll also share some DAOs, so some internet companies that utilize blockchain. I'll share them with Deborah so that you guys can do some additional research on DAOs and also see if you can get inside some of them as well. Because all you need to do is find them on the internet, and you can start working for them as well. And they pay rather well, actually, if you find the right one to join. So if you have skills in blockchain or law and you want to work for a DAO, then I definitely encourage you to look into it. When it comes to managing a DAO, it works very similar to any other company. But because these are internet native companies, they still need to have a entity. So in different jurisdictions, they have different entities. In the UK, we have limited liability companies. Do they have the same in Nigeria, Deborah? Is it the same limited liability companies and public companies?
Sorry, Nathan, I didn't get your question.
In Nigeria, do they also have limited liability companies? Is that what you call
Yes,
your company?
sure, we do.
Yeah. So in Nigeria, they have limited liability companies. In the US, they have LLCs, so limited liability companies as well. But some have also partnerships too. So when you're managing the DAO, you always need to set up a company so that the DAO can not just work on the internet, but work on the ground as well. And there's different jurisdictions that are starting to set up specific legal entities for DAOs or for blockchain-based organizations. So for example, in the US, you have this limited liability company, which utilizes blockchain. So it's a blockchain LLC. And so a DAO might set up a blockchain LLC so that they can utilize their internet money, but also set up a bank as well in a jurisdiction such as Vermont. Or the DAO might set up a legal entity in Wyoming and then be able to manage all of their operations inside the company while still connecting with the blockchain and being able to manage the governance of the assets on the blockchain as well. You also have some that use cooperatives, such as Next Mutual. I don't know if you guys know cooperatives, but it's another corporate type where people come together, they cooperate, and instead of like what happens in a limited liability company, where depending on how many shares you have or depending on how much money you have invested, you have more governance power over that company. In cooperatives, what happens is that everyone has one vote about what happens. So it's a lot more democratic. And a lot of DAOs are starting to take this model as well. And some DAOs don't use any legal entity. They just exist on the blockchain. This opens them up to a lot of risks. And it makes it hard for them to do non-digital transactions. They can only really work on the blockchain, do crypto transfers, but that's, some of them don't want or need to have a legal entity. So this is another thing, as a lawyer, you have to understand what your client's business objective is, what they want to achieve, so that you can give them the best advice on how they can manage, for example, their DAO, what legal entity, what legal structure, what corporate structure do they need to have when they're dealing with their DAO. Some DAOs have decentralized governance through a non-profit entity. So some DAOs also use it's similar to a charity. So a charity is a non-profit entity as well, but these are known as associations or foundations. They're another legal entity type. I don't know how far you guys have got when it comes to understanding corporation types, but these non-profit entities make it easier for these internet native companies to be able to operate, because anyone can join the non-profit entity. Whereas if you've got a limited liability company, then you need a specific amount, only a specific amount of people can join, and you need to know the names of people as well. So it makes it very hard to use a limited liability company for a DAO because it's international. Everyone can join it, but the limited liability company, the legal entity, is limiting the capacity or the operations of the DAO. That's why a lot of DAOs use non-profit entities or associations, because anyone can join them. Sometimes you don't even need to know the names of individuals that are joining them as well. So that's more the more likely entity legal entity that a DAO would use because it suits their international nature. This is also why a lot of DAOs go offshore to offshore jurisdictions to launch their DAOs, so that they're able to utilize some of these entity types that might not be in their jurisdiction. So even though these internet native companies, these DAOs, they can use these companies, it doesn't mean that you won't have legal issues, because even with companies that are not on the blockchain, they have legal issues that they have to deal with too. And it's the same with DAOs too. Sometimes when you're doing business, someone might not like what you do. You might, for example, break a law. There's multiple things that can happen that you can do that would make it so that that you get taken to court. So you still have to be aware of all the other legal risks. Now, there is a lot of development happening on a legislative level to support DAOs. One is from an organization that I'm actually working with called Koala, and they developed a corporate law model called Model Law, where any jurisdiction that wants to have these internet native companies inside their jurisdiction, they can utilize this model law to create a common legal framework applicable to DAOs. So it's super exciting. But right now, jurisdictions are largely unaware of the concept of DAOs, and they're only starting to get involved in it now. So it'd be great if you do want to stay ahead of the curve, you to understand about these blockchain organizations, to write about them, because they are the future. They are the newest company type or the newest corporation type, and they're really exciting as well. I'm the head of a DAO at DAppRadar. I don't know if you guys know DAppRadar. And we're building one of the first DAOs that are going to operate on a high level as well. So if you want to also follow how the process works, then definitely connect with me as well. Regarding future developments, some jurisdictions have opted for a different approach. So on the 1st of July 2021, as I mentioned beforehand, you have these Wyoming DAO legislations. And they have to apply to these strict limitations when you're using this Wyoming DAO LLC or this legal wrapper, this legal entity, which often includes limiting the amount of people that can join, making sure that you're using blockchain technology. There's a few requirements that you have to meet before you can utilize this specific legal entity. So we've been talking a lot about DAOs and how they issue tokens, the classification of those tokens. We've also talked about management of DAOs, so how they can set up their legal structure. Another big area is labor law or employment law. And this looks at the fact that there are risks when it comes to working with a DAO, because when you're getting paid in tokens, this can create an employee-employer relationship, which means that the money that you're given you need to pay employment taxes on it. You might also need to pay your insurance taxes, health insurance taxes from it. So you need to be aware when you're receiving payment in tokens, how it applies to your national law as well. Because even though you're getting paid in tokens, it's still going to be considered a salary. So you're interested in employment law, if you're interested in how to create work contracts or contractor contracts or freelancer contracts, this is super interesting as well, because when you're working in a DAO, sometimes there is a company, or sometimes the company is in another country. So you have to understand how to draft contracts that work on an international level as well. There's also some big tax considerations when looking at DAOs. They're not legal entities yet. They're not considered legal entities yet. So it's quite difficult to tax them. And the biggest suggestion is that they'll be considered as a pass-through entity for tax purposes. And a pass-through entity is exactly what it says in the word, pass-through. It means that the money passes through the entity and then it goes to the individuals. And the individuals are the ones that have to pay taxes. The entity doesn't have to pay any taxes. So the entity has no tax obligations, only the individuals that are connected to the entity do. So this is how a lot of legal scholars, a lot of legal researchers, a lot of practitioners in the space are advocating for DAOs to be considered, because you can't really expect this internet native organization, which anyone can join, anyone can be part of, anyone can contribute to. It's very difficult for it to pay taxes. So until it gets maybe a legal entity inside a jurisdiction, most practitioners and academics are suggesting that DAOs be considered as pass-through entities. And it will be the individual members that are part of the DAO that get paid a salary or that hold a token. They should be the ones that are going to pay the taxes. We do the time. All right. So on the banking and financial regulation side, this is where rules in Nigeria would I definitely see that too, especially when it comes to AML, KYC. AML stands for anti-money laundering, and KYC stands for know your customer. And for a lot of lawyers, they have to understand who they're dealing with on the other side when they're having a transaction. They need to know who their customer is, which is very difficult in blockchain industry, where sometimes you're dealing with people who you don't know their name or you know as their wallet address. So this creates a lot of legal risks that lawyers have to deal with. Also, when it comes to licenses for a project, for example, we spoke about this earlier, when it comes to securities, this is a big financial regulation that a lot of projects and lawyers have to be aware of. Capital requirements for a venture, for a lot of the different legal entities, you have to have a certain amount of money inside the company to set it up. In the UK, this can be as low as £1. You need to put £1 in the company to set it up. But for certain associations or non-profit entities, for example, as the associations in Switzerland, which a lot of DAOs use, you have to put up to 50,000 Swiss francs, which is a lot of money. Another financial regulatory activity that you have to be aware of is background checks and compliance on investors. So when a company wants to set up a blockchain organization or company, they would have to do background checks on the investors to make sure that they are high net worth investors, make sure that there's no dubious money, black money coming into the company as well. And they also have to understand that they can get exemptions from different jurisdictions, but specifically also the SEC. We talked about this briefly before when we discussed IP strategy, but IP also covers NFTs, and NFTs are non-fungible tokens. So they're similar to cryptocurrencies or that we spoke about earlier, but instead of them being money, they are just one token. And this token can be used to represent any sort of digital digital form or digital file on the internet. So This token can represent a picture. This token can represent a video. This token can represent a digital music file. This token can represent a letter. This token can represent anything. Even a legal document can be, you can have a token which represents a legal document. And so for NFTs, because they are also a very new technology, you once again have to understand the company which is issuing the NFT. You have to understand the business structure in order to understand the intellectual property rights. Because as NFTs are linked to real world assets sometimes as well, this can become even more complicated because you need to be able to connect the intellectual property rights of the real world asset and put that on the chain as well, put that on the blockchain as well, so that whenever someone has this NFT, they understand that it connects also to this real world asset. But this is quite a new area. I don't know if any of you are interested in intellectual property law. If you are, do let me know, and then I'll give you a bit more information on this. I'm actually mentoring a student who's doing a master thesis, NFTs and the intersection between German law and intellectual property law. So yeah, if anyone's really interested in intellectual property law and NFTs, do let me know. Then one of my favorite topics, data protection. We've gone through 2 presentations on it now, so I'm sure you guys have a deep understanding of how it works. But there's a lot of data which is being exchanged on these databases, these blockchain-based databases, right? Every token is a piece of data. Every token can be considered as even personal data. So how do we manage the pseudonymous? As we said last time, pseudonymous means that you can't tell who the individual is from the data that's given, but you can trace that person back. And the reason why you can trace people back is that even though they might not be using their name when they're interacting on the blockchain, you can see the internet provider, or you can see their IP address. And then governments can use this to identify what network provider they're using and therefore find the individual. So you don't see their name on when they're interacting on the blockchain, but if you understand data forensics, if you understand how online crime works and how people investigate people, you can still find out people's personal data from them interacting on the blockchain. So it's still important to make sure people understand their data protection rights, and they understand the risks as well by doing data mapping processes to understand the flow of the data, and to have these policies, grounds of processing, and access for their data subject rights when they're interacting with an organization, a blockchain-based organization, whether that be a DAO or an exchange. Blockchains, there is, because once the data is on chain, because of blockchain's immutability, it can't be deleted. Whether on blockchain is considered a data subject or a data controller, it's still, it hasn't been clarified yet. So the other thing, we'll talk legality of smart contracts, and smart contracts are self-executing agreements coded into the blockchain. I'll access this agreement online. This agreement might be to swap my cryptocurrency for another one, and I don't need to go to a website or exchange to do that. I can do it through a smart contract. And in Bitcoin, for example, the blockchain-based protocol, smart contracts are used so that I can send money from me to my family in Sierra Leone. I can send a Bitcoin from my wallet to a family in Sierra Leone's wallet if they have a Bitcoin wallet too. And I don't need to, no one else needs to be involved. And that's a smart contract. I just send it through, and then it goes from my wallet to the blockchain to their wallet. But there is quite a lot of discussion about how this frame of contract and property law. When I'm using a smart contract, does that make a contract between me and the technology? The contract between me and the person of the smart contract. So at the end of the exchange, what happens when it's a smart contract between myself? So I'm interacting with a smart contract, but I'm swapping one of my tokens for another. Is the contract between me and myself, or is it between me and the developer who created this smart contract, who created this technology, who created this token? Some of these questions still haven't been figured out yet, but the issues that you can research on and write on if you're really interested in blockchain and how it applies to different legal areas. Deep dive, the UK Commission recently completed a consultation in 2000 where they looked at different, such as express items, should be some sort of talking about risks, understanding the developers and the people who utilize smart contracts. It's really interesting if you're in smart law in general. This is definitely a good one to check out. Last but not least, when builders or entrepreneurs or founders are building this, not just the technical and business risks, legal ones. That's where lawyers such as me and yourselves, the more knowledge we have on these different legal areas, the more that we can provide them with advice on in the blockchain space compliantly. And that's it. That's the whole of our presentation. Thank you so much, guys. So I saw two questions. Do countries use these tokens, or countries have specific tokens that they use? Some countries are starting to purchase cryptocurrencies. In El Salvador, for example, they purchase a lot of Bitcoins. Some countries hold them because these tokens were confiscated from criminals. So countries are starting to move towards using and holding them now too, yes. When I was talking about licenses, I was talking about financial regulatory licenses that some business owners might need to get. So for example, if you're setting up an exchange in a country, you need a license to do that, right? So when you're setting up a cryptocurrency exchange, also you need not just an exchange license, but a license to exchange cryptocurrencies. And in every country, they have a different licensing requirement, different application process. So you need a lawyer in that jurisdiction, in that country, to help you understand how that process works. And usually it's the lawyer of the blockchain organization that would support the entrepreneur to do that. I've seen a lot of hands raised, but I don't know if you can do those questions, Deborah. I've got about, let's say, 10 minutes and I have to bounce. It would be easy if you did put the questions in the Q&A. I could answer them straight away because I don't know how the policy works regarding raising hands. but I'll stop sharing my screen now. All right.
Sorry, Nathan, you said you have 10 more minutes, right? To
Yeah,
spare.
exactly.
Okay, so should we stop the questions, or can you still take like 1 or 2 more?
Yeah, exactly. I can take 1 or 2 more questions if anyone has any.
Okay, I don't even think, do we have new questions here? I don't think we have new questions. Let me see. I think you practically addressed everything. The last question here, can this token be turned to cash? I think you answered that already. Okay. Do countries use each other? You've answered that. Apart from finances, are there other areas blockchain can function? I believe you attended to this earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't get the meaning of that. Oh, you attended to that already.
Okay, yeah, I think I've answered all of those.
The practically something you've addressed already. Yeah, the ones here. Okay, we have about 4 people raise their hands. Do countries use each of these tokens, or countries have specific tokens they use? I think it's been addressed.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
that one.
All right, so let me probably enable 2 persons to ask questions. Nathan, can you quickly attend to that?
Of course, definitely so.
Okay, thank you so much, Nathan. That was very, very insightful and highly informative. We have Adeniro. Adeniro, you can. Okay. Allowed to talk. Okay, Adeniro, you can go ahead and ask your question. Adeniro Dockers, kindly ask your question. So
Good afternoon, ma.
good afternoon, please.
It's not a question per se. I'm just raising my hand so that I could be heard to the panelists as regards the attendance.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I believe that is it. Faithia, is it the same thing? We have Faithia. Now, you can mute yourself now. Faithia, is yours a question for Nathan? Okay. In order not to waste time, okay, we have Lily. Lily, we can just take yours quickly if it's a question for Nathan.
It's not a question.
All right. Okay, thank you. I guess we have come to.
Ma, I think we have questions in the Q&A. There are some questions in the Q&A now.
Maybe I didn't take note of that. Olayemi, kindly go ahead. Thank you. Just take about 2 for Nathan.
Okay. Edith Johnson asked this question. I learned that cryptocurrency has been banned in Nigeria. What's the place of governance in blockchain and its regulations in Nigeria? Mr. Nathan, I think you can answer that question now.
Yeah, definitely. First and foremost, thank you so much for the comments inside the chat, with everyone saying thank you. It's a pleasure to always be here. Thank you again for the invitation, Deborah, and the team. You do a great job.
Thank you.
To answer your question, I learned that cryptocurrency has been banned in Nigeria. It's been banned in certain situations. I haven't dived too deep into it in a long period of time, but they were blocking bank transfers from crypto exchanges to banks. So you might have your money in the crypto exchange, but you weren't able to take it out to the bank. And this is because they were trying to increase the compliance and regulation of the banks that will work with the crypto exchanges. So I do have to follow up on that. I haven't seen news on that in a while. There's a lot of different countries to stay on top of. But yeah, that was the last I heard from there. And what's the place in governance in blockchain and its regulation in Nigeria? Well, governance is how technology or an asset is organized. So what are the different stakeholders and what are the rules? processes and procedures that they have to make sure that it runs correctly. And with blockchain technology, the governance is on multiple levels. So for example, when it comes to Bitcoin, which is the first asset to use blockchain, they have governance on a technological level where anyone in the world can go to the website, go to Bitcoin and download the client onto their laptop or onto any processor that they have. And then they can help to already be part of the governance of verifying the transactions. So, and then depending on whether you are chosen as someone who verified the transaction, you get Bitcoin. So you get paid to prove and verify a transaction. That's why it's called proof of work, because you use your computer's power when you're connected to the Bitcoin blockchain network to be able to verify those transactions. No humans are needed for that process. It's just the technology. So how that works on a governance level is that anyone can get involved, anyone can verify a transaction, but if someone tries to verify a transaction falsely, then 51% of the community needs to agree with that individual as well. Otherwise, that individual gets kicked out of the network. So this is a rule, this is a process, this is a procedure to make sure that good actors stay in the network and bad actors are kicked out of the network. Because if you try to say that an action has gone through the network when it hasn't, or you try to say that you've sent someone money who hasn't, through your laptop, through your device, then you'll get kicked out of the network, and it will be, you won't earn any money from it, and you'll waste your computer's power, you'll waste your electricity, you'll waste your internet to do that. So this is the power of blockchain, right? It's the ability to get involved in verifying transactions, get rewarded for doing it. And then there's so many different applications that are built on top of that from that basic technology. And how it's governed is on a technological level, as I said, and then also with these processes and procedures, and then also on a social level as well, because you need 51% of the community to agree with you if you want to make a change in a transaction. So there's two other.
Thank you, sir, for that info.
No worries, no worries. There's two other questions that I'll get to quickly. What's the real essence of blockchain to a lawyer? It really depends what you want to do as a lawyer in the space, because as I said, there's mainly the financial applications such as Bitcoin and different cryptocurrencies that are created, but then there are also data applications, there's applications in AI on blockchain, there's applications in logistics, supply chain, identity. There's so many different areas which leverage this truth machine, like this machine, this technology that allows you to verify and transparently see the transactions. There's a lot of different industries that can utilize this, that want to be able to have tamper-proof, censorship-resistant ledgers or information shared on the internet. So it depends which area you want to get into to dictate what type of lawyer would like it, because if you're a technology lawyer, then you're going to love it. But then also for other areas, even IP lawyers, for example, they can get into it too, because they're needed. Like every single type of lawyer can be in the blockchain industry. You just have to find where your fit is. And then the last one is, how can one buy the tokens? Well, I don't give out financial advice, but you can usually buy these tokens on exchanges. So you just have to look for a local exchange in your jurisdiction that allows you to set up, connect, and purchase the tokens. I think that was the last question, I believe.
Okay. Olayemi, that should be the last question, right? Thank you so much, then.
I'm not sure that's the last question. No.
Well, but I think Nathan doesn't have much time to spare with us again.
Okay, ma.
Yes, so what we can do so we don't keep him further than the time he has for us today. We really appreciate you, Nathan. That was such an enlightening session that you had with us today. You can all connect to Nathan on LinkedIn. And then Nathan, I don't know if you're on other social media platforms, but I know LinkedIn, you are so visible there. So are you on other platforms that they will connect with you? For those who are not on LinkedIn before, because some of these ladies are not on LinkedIn, even though we are pushing it to them that they should be on LinkedIn. That should be the #1 social media platform they should be on.
Yes, exactly. LinkedIn is where I found my first job in blockchain technology.
Wow.
The quick story is that I shared my research that I was doing on blockchain and data protection law. People liked it. And then I reached out to someone who said they were hiring. I shared my research with them. I shared my CV and the work that I did in law. And then they said that they'd like me to join their company. They told me to send a contract for them. So my first job was to make my own contract in the company. So LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool. Definitely utilize it, share your research on there, connect with people who you want to learn from and that you aspire to be like, and then you'll be able to find your network and job opportunities too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, great. Ladies, we've heard from Nathan. That's a testimony to spur you up on the need to be on LinkedIn. As we have been telling you, you've heard from him also. He got his first job in the blockchain space on LinkedIn. So kindly connect to Nathan on LinkedIn. And of course, you can send your questions to him, and please don't bombard him with too much because he has a lot full in his hands, right? But he's sure there to provide you guidance, and we want to really appreciate you on behalf of the Hilton Top Solicitors team, myself, and everyone, every of the amazing ladies here on the call and the rest that are not present in this call now. We say thank you very much, Nathan. And we appreciate your continued support in availing yourself each time to come and dish out this wealth of knowledge. And we ask that the Almighty God will make your wealth of knowledge to continually increase, and that these lessons you are impacting on everyone here will leave indelible marks on the lives of every one of them and every one of us at large. Thank you so much for your sacrifice. We do appreciate you. Ladies, please let's give Nathan a virtual clap and give him your appreciation. I see that a lot of appreciation has been coming in. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That's so amazing. Great feedback coming from it. Thank you so much, Nathan. I do appreciate you. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. So we'll keep talking. I'll reach out to you again. So until the next time, we'll see on this platform again. I say bye. And then, of course, like I said, I'll reach out. We'll chat again. Thank you so much.
Of course, Deborah. Appreciate you guys. You guys have the great energy. You guys are going to do well. And the fact that you're here already is a big step forward into you realizing your dreams in the legal industry or whatever profession God has planned for you. So until then, let's stay in touch, guys. Find me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and that's it.
Yes.